The silver car came up the coast road at the wrong speed for a road that ended at the water, and Ivy Baxter heard it before she saw it through the workshop window. She had both hands in a bowl of slip, the white ceramic liquid cool against her palms, and the sound of gravel under city tires was wrong for a Tuesday in September. Harrow's Cove didn't get weekday visitors after Labor Day. The summer people were gone. The fishing boats went out before dawn and came in before noon. Nobody came up the coast road mid-morning unless they had a reason, and reasons this time of year were few. She pulled her hands free of the bowl. Behind her, her son Leo had stopped working on his model lighthouse and was watching the window with the focused calm of a child who has been told the rules of living somewhere small. "If a stranger comes, stay where I can see you." He tilted his head. "Is that a rental?" "Looks like it." She wiped her hands on her work apron, the one with the firing schedule penciled along the left hem, and went to the door. The man who got out of the car was tall, in a dark wool jacket that hadn't been bought for the coast. He carried a portfolio case under one arm, and the expression of someone who has just been informed by a GPS that he has arrived when he clearly hasn't. He stood in the gravel and looked at the converted fishing shack, the wide windows she'd cut herself, the kiln exhaust stack, the weathered sign reading Baxter Ceramics, and then looked at his phone and then back at the shack, and his jaw shifted in the way jaws shift when a man is deciding whether to blame the technology or himself. He looked up and saw her in the doorway. "Cove House Studio," he said. His voice was measured, the kind that didn't raise itself in open spaces. "This is Cove House Studio." She stayed in the doorway. "My studio." He reached into his jacket and produced a folded printed page, thick paper, a rental agency letterhead she recognized. He held it out. She came down the steps and took it. The address read, Cove House Studio, 4 Harrow Point Road, Harrows Cove, Maine. The booking dates were September 8 through October 20. The name at the top, Cole Harrington, Harrington & Associates Architecture, Boston. "That's the property across the headland," she said, handing it back. 14 Harrow Point Road. They have a studio loft. Very nice. You want to turn around at the end of the lane and take the gravel cut-off north. He looked at the paper. He looked at the road she was describing. "The agency sent me this address." Then the agency made an error. She waited a beat. "This is my studio and my home. I live upstairs." From the workshop doorway, Leo said, in the unhurried voice of 8-year-olds who have heard everything, "Mom, is that man lost?" Cole looked at the boy, really looked, without the reflexive adult smile, and something in his face did the thing of honest calculation. "It seems I might be," he said, and it came out more plainly than she'd expected. She said her name, Ivy Baxter, and he said his. She nodded toward the road. He looked at his phone. He looked at the water beyond the studio, the Atlantic grey and wide and indifferent in the September light. He pressed the flat of his thumbnail against the clip of a pen tucked in his breast pocket. It was an unconscious motion, small and private, the kind of thing a person does when they are not as composed as they appear. "I should call the agency," he said. "The agency office is in Camden. 40 minutes away and they close for lunch." She stepped back. "There's coffee inside if you want to sort it from the porch." He thanked her. He sat on the porch bench, phone to his ear, while she went back to her slip bowl. Leo came to stand beside her at the work table and watched the man through the window the way he watched the tide charts posted above the kiln, with interest and no urgency. "He has a nice pen," Leo said. "Don't ask him about it." "I'm not going to ask him about it." He asked about it 11 minutes later. Cole told him it was a Mont Blanc his former professor had given him when he made partner. 15 years ago. Leo nodded as if this was reasonable information and went back to his lighthouse model. The agency call lasted a long time. Ivy could hear Cole's voice through the screen door. Level, patient, the word unfortunately used, twice, the word unacceptable not used at all, which told her something. Rich men who said unacceptable shouted. The ones who didn't had already decided what they were going to do. He came to the screen door when it was over. He didn't open it. "They've confirmed the booking error. The correct property is 14 Harrow Point Road, but the current renter has extended through the month. They can offer me a hotel in Camden or a room in Bar Harbor." Bar Harbor is a long drive. 45 minutes each way. I had planned to work without commuting. He paused. His thumb found the pen clip again. "The agency mentioned you sometimes rent the upstairs room." She looked at him through the screen. "The upstairs room is a workroom. There's a camp cot in it for when I fire overnight." "I know." He didn't look away. "I'm asking whether you'd consider renting it. I'll pay what you set. I'll use the outdoor shower. I'll eat in town. I won't come into the studio without asking, and I won't be in the way of your son or your work." He paused. "I have 6 weeks of drawings to finish, and I need somewhere that isn't a hotel lobby." She thought about the electric kiln she'd been nursing since July. The repair quote from the technician in Rockport was $620. She had $180 set aside. "The upstairs room has no bathroom," she said. "The bathroom is in the house, the kitchen is in the house. You'd use them at hours we agree on. In writing." "Of course. I'll write rules, you'll sign them." "I would expect nothing less." "I'm not done." She leaned against the doorframe. "I have an 8-year-old. I need to think carefully about whether I'm willing to let a stranger sleep 20 feet from him for 6 weeks. I'm not negotiating the price. I'm telling you why the price doesn't settle it." He absorbed this without flinching, which was either good judgment or very good practice. "I understand," he said. "I haven't said yes either. I only wanted to ask." Leo appeared beside her at the door, holding the lighthouse half assembled in both hands. He studied Cole through the screen with the same attention he gave the tide charts. "If you stay," Leo said seriously, "you have to know which birds are which. We have a lot of birds." Cole considered this. "I'm a fast learner," he said. "I'll test you," Leo said. That evening she wrote the rules on a legal pad. Cole signed them with the Mont Blanc. By 8 o'clock he was eating chowder she hadn't planned to make for two, listening to Leo explain the difference between a double-crested cormorant and a great cormorant, with the focused patience of a man who had no reason to fake interest and appeared, improbably, not to be faking it. By 9, he had carried his own bags up the narrow stair without asking her to help. By 10, when she stood at the kitchen window and watched the light come on in the workroom, above the kiln shed, she understood she had done something she couldn't undo. She didn't yet understand the shape of it. He didn't sleep well the first night. The cot was fine. It was the sound. The foghorn at the point every 40 minutes, the water against the dock pilings, the small settling creaks of a building that had been a fishing operation for 70 years before she'd converted it. He lay still and let the sounds accumulate, and at some point before 3, he stopped trying to separate them and just listened to the whole of it. He thought about the Harrington and Associates proposal, due in November, which he had come here to finish. He thought about his sister Lucille telling him last week that his disappearing to Maine would read badly to the partners. He thought about what it meant that his first instinct had been to agree with her. He pressed the cap of the pen in the dark and thought, instead, about the woman downstairs who had written 8 rules on a legal pad and handed them to him like a small contract between civilized people, which was exactly what they were. He thought about the boy and his cormorants. He slept eventually. He dreamed oddly about a porch step. In the morning, Ivy made coffee. She handed it to him through the screen door without ceremony, and he stood on the steps in his socks, because his shoes were damp from the path, and he drank it looking at the water, and for the first time in as long as he could specifically remember, he did not open an email while doing it. Leo came out at 7:30 and pointed at a large, dark, hunched shape on the dock piling and asked Cole what he thought it was. Cole said a cormorant, and Leo corrected him. "Great cormorant, not double-crested. Look at the white throat patch." Cole looked. Leo was right. "I'll know them all by Friday," Cole said. "I'll test you," Leo said. He was better at it than he'd expected. He bought the field guide at the general store in town that afternoon, along with weatherproofing compound and a length of mahogany trim from the lumber yard on Route 1 that he paid for in cash and did not explain to the woman at the register. He fixed the front step on a Thursday afternoon while Ivy was firing. It took 2 hours, a borrowed drill, and 1 tutorial from Leo about how to pre-drill without splitting old wood. Cole had not used a drill in 12 years. He discovered he still knew how. He also discovered, kneeling on a porch in his good trousers with sawdust on his sleeve, that knowing how to do something with your hands and not having done it in 12 years were different categories of loss. And the second one was larger than he'd understood. The contractor quoted $340, Ivy said when she saw it that evening. The materials were $26. I know. She was looking at the step, not at him. You didn't have to. The step was soft. You have an 8-year-old who runs down these stairs. She didn't answer that. She went back inside. He heard her put the kettle on, and after a moment she came back to the screen and handed him a mug of tea he hadn't asked for. He thanked her. He drank it standing at the base of the steps. The tea was strong. The way tea is when someone makes it for themselves and adds a cup for someone else without overthinking it. He pressed the pen cap and thought about that for a while. Lucille Harrington arrived on a Saturday, 11 days after Cole did, driving up from Boston because she had decided, as she often decided things, that the situation required her physical presence to be managed correctly. She walked up the path in linen trousers and low boots and knocked once on the porch post. She did knock, Ivy would later reflect, which was one point in her favor, and introduced herself by her full name and relation to Cole, in that order. "Miss Baxter," she said, "I apologize for arriving without notice. I'll be brief." Ivy opened the screen. "There's coffee." "Thank you, no." Lucille set her bag down on the porch bench. "My brother has a presentation to the National Architecture Board in November. He has partners in Boston who are interpreting his absence as instability. I have a room held for him at a property in Kennebunkport with full office services and reliable signal. I'd like to settle whatever arrangement you've made here and drive him back today." "Cole is an adult," Ivy said. "Yes." Lucille smoothed the cuff of her jacket. It was a small motion, quick and automatic, the way people touch something familiar when they are preparing to say something they've rehearsed. "He is also my brother, and I have been managing his calendar since before he made partner, and I know what 6 weeks without structure does to him." Ivy looked at her. She looked at the smooth cuff. She said, "He fixed the porch step last week. He knows every bird on this stretch of coast by species. He's been sleeping past 6, for the first time in what he tells me is 11 years. She paused. "That sounds less like a man who needs managing, and more like a man who needed to stop." Lucille was quiet for a moment that was slightly too long. From inside the workshop, Leo's voice carried cleanly. "Mom, is that the sister?" "Yes," Ivy called back. "She has a nice car." Lucille looked toward the sound, and something in her face shifted, the narrow margin between controlled and caught. She picked up her bag. "May I speak with him?" "He's on the dock." She went. Ivy stood at the screen and watched the way she'd learned to watch things she couldn't hear, by the shoulders, by the angle of the head, by the small tells of the body, when words are doing more than they seem to. Lucille's shoulders went down, just a fraction, about 7 minutes in. Cole reached out and touched her arm briefly, the gesture of someone who has had long practice at steadying the same person. Then they stood side by side without speaking, looking at the water, and Ivy looked away because the moment wasn't hers. Lucille came back up the path alone. She stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. "Mrs. Baxter." Her voice had changed, not softer exactly, but less arranged. "I owe you an apology for how I opened this conversation. I treated you like an obstacle." "You were worried about your brother." "Yes," she paused. She stopped, began again. "The step looks good." "He did a good job on it," Ivy said. "Leo supervised." Something moved through Lucille's expression, too quickly to name. She nodded once, picked up her bag and walked back to her car. She sat in it for a while, then she drove back down the coast road. Cole came up from the dock and stood in the yard with his hands in his jacket pockets. "Is she gone?" "She's gone." "I'm sorry about that." "Don't be." Ivy turned back to the kiln gauge. "She loves you. She just needs to find a way to do it that doesn't require a calendar." He was quiet. "Then that's the most accurate thing anyone has said about my sister in 38 years. 3 weeks in, he asked her, over the shared morning coffee on the porch, very politely, if she'd be willing to read a single paragraph of a document his legal team had sent, just to tell him whether she understood it. She said yes before she finished reading the request. The paragraph was a liability clause in a conservation easement tied to a property his firm was incorporating into their proposal. She read it twice. "The problem is the word substantial in the third line," she said. "It's undefined. If this ever went to dispute, opposing counsel would argue that anything above a threshold they choose constitutes substantial, and the clause becomes unenforceable by design." She handed it back. "You need material instead of substantial, and you need a percentage defined in a subordinate clause." Cole set down his coffee. He looked at her for a count of 3. "I dropped out of law school," she said, before he could ask. 4 years in, Leo came along and my then-husband decided that was the end of my career and the beginning of his." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "So, ceramics." "And ceramics. It turns out I'm better at ceramics." She nodded at the document. "Your legal team has been reviewing that for how long?" 3 months, 2 partners and a senior associate." She stood and went to check the kiln timer. "You might want to have a conversation about that." He took out the Mont Blanc. He wrote in the margin, small and exact. He capped the pen. Then he laughed, small and surprised, a single exhale that lifted at the end. Ivy looked at the kiln gauge. She did not let him see that she'd registered it. Leo appeared at the doorway. He looked at Cole's face. He looked at Ivy. He went back inside without a word. Later, he showed Ivy his field notebook. He had drawn in 3 careful lines a figure at a table with one corner of the mouth lifted. Labeled in Leo's deliberate print, the architect laughing. He did not show it to Cole. The photograph appeared on a Tuesday. A friend in Portland sent it with a question mark and nothing else. A link to an architecture news blog, the headline reading, "Where is Cole Harrington? Boston's top architect spotted at remote Maine studio with mystery woman and child." Below it, a long lens photograph taken from the public boat launch across the cove. Cole on the dock with his drawings spread in front of him, Leo belly down on the planks looking at something in the water, and Ivy at the edge of the frame in her work apron, handing something through the studio door. The second paragraph speculated, with no evidence, that the child was Cole's. By the time she'd read it twice, her hands had stopped being entirely steady. He had left that morning for Boston. A board meeting, 3 days, maybe 4. He was sorry he would be back by the weekend. He had said, "I will be back," twice at the door, which at the time she had appreciated. Now she sat at the work table with the phone in both hands and thought about the booking error, about how easily a keystroke selects the wrong address from a drop-down, about how thoroughly a photograph could reframe 6 weeks into a narrative someone had been building toward. She thought about Leo's father, who had arranged things too, who had chosen the apartment, chosen the city, chosen the end date of her career, and who had called it loving her until the day he stopped. At 2 in the morning, she was still awake. She packed a bag for herself and Leo. She left a note on the work table beside the kiln gauge, next to the Mont Blanc pen Cole had left there when he rushed out that morning. "Cole, I don't know what to think yet. Please give me 3 days. She drove to her grandmother's house in Portland before the sun came up. She did not look back at the coast road. Cole read the note 11 hours later. He had driven through traffic, sat in a board meeting, and returned to Harrow's Cove to find the studio dark, the parking space empty, and the note in Ivy's handwriting beside his pen on the work table. He read the note, he picked up the pen, he held it for a long time. He set it back down. He went upstairs and packed. He did not take the pen. He sat in the workroom with the lights off for 40 minutes, listening to the foghorn at the point. Then he drove to the hotel in Camden that the agency had offered him 6 weeks ago, and he lay on the hotel bed and looked at the ceiling and said nothing to anyone. Her grandmother was 83 years old, kept a kitchen that smelled of toast and strong tea, and had long since stopped softening things she believed needed to be said plainly. "You've been here 4 days, she said on the 4th morning. "You haven't told me what he did wrong. You've only told me what you're afraid of." Ivy wrapped both hands around her mug. "I'm afraid they're the same thing." "They are not." Her grandmother sat across from her. "Tell me one thing he did that a man who'd arranged all of it would not have done." Ivy was quiet for a long time. The toast cooled, the tea went lukewarm. "He fixed the porch step," she said finally. "Nobody asked him to. The materials were $26. Her grandmother waited. "He learned every bird by species. He took the field guide out every morning. He let Leo test him, and he didn't pretend to know the ones he didn't." She paused. He laughed. It was small, but it was real. I don't think he'd laughed like that in a long time. "And the pen," her grandmother said quietly. Ivy set down her mug. "He didn't take the pen. He left it on the work table. He's had it for 15 years. He touches it every time he's nervous. I've watched him do it 100 times. And he left it behind and walked out without a note." Her grandmother looked at her for a long moment. "A man who arranged 6 weeks to use you," she said, "would not leave behind the one object he has reached for every single day for 15 years. She folded her hands on the table. "That is not strategy. That is a man who didn't know how to ask you to keep something for him." The truth came from Mrs. Quinby, who ran the diner on the Harbour Road and had made it her business to know Harrow's Cove's business for 37 years. She called on the 5th morning, and Ivy sat at her grandmother's kitchen table and listened without interrupting. The rental agency, it turned out, had received a handwritten letter in August from a man named Professor Alden Keene, retired, formerly of the Boston Architectural College. The letter read, in full, "If a man named Cole Harrington contacts your office asking for a quiet place to work on the Maine coast, I am asking as a personal favor that you book him at Cove House Studio, 4 Harrow Point Road, Harrow's Cove. The ceramicist who lives and works there is named Ivy Baxter. She is capable and serious, and she could use the income." More than that, Cole Harrington is one of the finest architects I have ever trained, and he is about to lose himself entirely to building other people's visions without ever building one of his own. He needs to be somewhere real. He needs to remember what it is to make something with his hands and not have it be billable. I believe Mrs. Baxter's studio is that place. I apologize for the unconventional nature of this request. Yours, Alden Keene. The letter was dated August 3rd. Professor Keene had died on August 17th. He had not told Cole what he'd done. Ivy sat for a long time after Mrs. Quinby finished talking. He didn't know, she said. It wasn't a question. He didn't know, Mrs. Quinby said. The agency has the original letter. I've seen it. She called Cole at 3 in the afternoon. He picked up on the second ring. Ivy. The pen is on the work table, she said. I didn't move it. A pause. I know. I talked to Mrs. Quinby. She told me about Professor Keene's letter. A longer pause. I found out yesterday, he said. The agency called the firm to verify something, and Lucille took the call. She drove up to tell me herself. He stopped. He was the one who gave me the pen. He said, use it every day and you'll remember every day that someone thought you were worth investing in. He stopped again. He died before he could tell me what he'd arranged. He died before I could. He didn't finish the sentence. Ivy didn't ask him to. Come back, she said. Come back and take the pen from the work table. Take it on the porch in front of me. A silence. Ivy, I'm 5 hours out. I know where you are. I don't have the right to. Cole, she said it quietly. Where are you right now? A long breath. I've been in the car, he said, since noon. She closed her eyes. I was going to call from the Harbour Road, he said. I didn't think I had permission to call before the Harbour Road. Drive carefully, she said. Yes. He arrived at 4:15. He parked at the bottom of the path and walked up. He had nothing in his hands, no portfolio, no bag, nothing. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. She came out and stood at the top of them. She held the pen out. He came up the steps slowly. The way a person climbs steps they aren't sure they've been invited to climb. He took the pen. He didn't uncap it. He pressed the flat of his thumbnail against the clip. Once, the way she'd seen him do it 100 times when the room or the day or the silence required something to hold on to, and then lowered his hand. I owe you an explanation, he said. Professor Keene owes me an explanation, she said. You owe me a porch step that still holds in 10 years. He looked down at the step. He tested his weight on it. It held. He looked up. From inside the studio, Leo's voice came through the screen, clear and matter-of-fact. Is he staying? Ivy looked at Cole. That, she said, is a question I'll let you answer. Cole looked at the screen door. He looked past the roofline at the Atlantic going copper and rose in the late afternoon light. He pressed his thumbnail against the pen clip one final time and let it rest. I'd like to, he said, if you'll have me. Leo pushed open the screen door. He looked at Cole with the evaluating calm of a child who has spent 6 weeks forming a considered opinion and is satisfied with it. You still have to finish the cormorant section, Leo said. We haven't covered pelagic species. I know, Cole said. I've been studying. Leo nodded once. He went back inside. Ivy stepped to the side to let Cole through the door. He came up onto the porch and stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the tiredness in his face and the other thing underneath it. The thing that had been accumulating quietly, all fall the way tides accumulate, without announcement, without anyone deciding to let them. She reached out and put her hand briefly on his forearm, just for a second. She didn't look at his face when she did it. You're at the right address, she said. You always were. He put the pen in his breast pocket. He pressed the cap of it once, firmly the way a man settles something that has been unsettled long enough. Yes, he said, I know that now. The foghorn at the point sounded once, far out on the water, the way it sounded every evening at this hour, whether anyone was listening or not. Inside, Leo was back at his lighthouse model, fitting the beam housing together in careful pieces and murmuring to himself as he worked. The names of the birds that came in off the Atlantic in autumn. The ones you only saw after Labor Day when the summer people were gone and the coast belonged to those who had learned, one quiet way or another, to stay.